energy.
2023! What's up, fam? Welcome to Mad Science Films. I'm James Plumb, if you've forgotten, filmmaker and sexual astronaut, and welcome to my lovely, humble co-host.
Humble. James Morrissey, one half of the Mad Science Films team. Happy New Year, everybody. And don't forget, guys, if you do like this video, then please hit the like button. If you've been enjoying the Mad Science content and want to subscribe to our channel, come follow us on Facebook. Any comments, leave us in the comment section down below. Let's crack on.
Yeah. Also, guys, remember this? Please check out our 4th feature film for free over on YouTube. Just search for Little Monster or click on the link in the show notes below. This week, guys, we're campaigning for a forgotten masterpiece of genre cinema to be given the exquisite Blu Ray treatment. And although we do have some viewer recommendations, and guys, thank you for that, me and Jim, we were missing out. We missed this. So Jim wanted to go this week. And Jim, what is the motion picture that you are giving to us?
I've gone for the film that nearly bankrupted the producer. It's called Slipstream. Stars. It's got quite a good cast, actually, but main stars are Bill Paxton and Mark Hamill. And the synopsis is, in the near future, where Earth has been devastated by man's pollution and giant winds rule the planet, bounty hunter Matt kidnaps a murderer out of the hands of 2 police officers planning to get the bounty himself. I think they got that a little bit wrong, actually, because I think Mark Hamill's the bounty hunter and Matt, played by Bill Paxton, is some criminal nomad kind of guy.
Yeah,
yeah.
And also, a bounty hunter called Matt? I mean, come on. Yeah. You know, if you're a bounty hunter, you got to have a cool name like Striker, Slade.
I mean, his name is
Jeremy.
Tasker. Tasker was a pretty, but kind of fitting for the genre and the era, pretty naff bounty hunter name. I mean, it could be worse. You could be called the Dog. The Dog bounty hunter. But... So there's a lot that's not quite right with this film. There's some questions.
Is this the first time watch for you, though, Jim?
This is the first time watch for me, yeah. I've watched it twice. I still have the same questions in some parts. But which is funny because this is produced by, I forgot his name now.
Gary Kurtz.
What's his name?
Gary Kurtz.
Gary Kurtz, that's it. So he obviously... Yeah, so he produced and heavily involved with the Star Wars franchise, which is, you know, big sci-fi franchise. And also you got Steven Lisberger, who directed Tron, another sci-fi classic. This has got a really good cast. You got Bill Paxton, you got Bob Peck, you got Mark Hamill, you got Robert Coltrane, Ben Kingsley. You know, really good cast. Let's go into why. Let's go to its faults, and then I'll give you why I think it should be given a release. Okay, so you know, some of the story doesn't make a lot of sense. There's the big deal about the android, which is played by Bob Peck, Byron. So it starts off that Mark Hamill's character Tasker is hunting down Byron the android because Byron has killed somebody, and you never quite understand why he did that throughout the whole film. So that was a bit of an off-putter. But I quite liked his transformation, Byron, like his character, because he starts off kind of like this, almost like a Hans Gruber, serious, dangerous man in a suit. Then he turns to like Jesus, healing children who are blind, and then he turns into like because obviously you discover then that, spoilers, that he's an android. He turns into like a bishop from Alien 2. You know, could he be a friend, could he not be a friend, could he be trusted, so he goes through transformation. But yeah, I had a lot of questions, and I don't think it was directed very well, and I don't know whether there was a lot of scenes perhaps that were cut from the film, because it seemed quite disjointed in a lot of it. It seemed to lack a bit of a punch. It seemed to lack a bit of an edge.
I agree. I wonder whether, rather than scenes being cut necessarily, or perhaps they were cut from the script. They ran out of money, based on obviously, the financial troubles of
I
Gary.
wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so Gary Kurtz was going through a
definitely.
divorce at the time. He'd fallen out with George Lucas. He wasn't having a divorce from George Lucas, but also he had a business divorce from George Lucas. So he worked with George Lucas on the first two, had a falling out, wasn't involved in Return of the Jedi. Yes, was going through a nasty divorce, kind of staked all of his career on this movie, Slipstream. And yeah, not the best gamble, Gary. I got to be honest. But yeah, I think you're right. I think there are parts that don't make sense, that don't quite loop up, and I would suspect they probably shot as much as they could afford, and then kind of went, well, we got to make
try to do it in the edit. I mean, it's some really nice locations. Some of the sets are pretty cool. You know, I don't mind that old dated 80s kind of matte background kind of special effects either. I don't mind that. It just lacked it quite a bit. Yeah. But Bob Peck for me puts in a good performance. I think he kind of, I mean, the protagonist is supposed to be Bill Paxton, which he's kind of a 2D, not very interesting kind of character, is he? But he brings a lot of entertainment, I guess.
Do you know?
So I like that it's kind of like a buddy movie.
Yes,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah,
yeah. I love Bill Paxton, but I kind of suspect, based on a few other films where he's the main guy, he's better as a supporting character. You know, he adds kind of flavor. As the most obvious example is Aliens, where he is, you know, absolutely great as the wise ass. When he's forced to become the main guy, he ends up being quite vanilla. And there's a few other films which, you know, won't be in my recommendations because, again, I don't rate them that highly. But there was Monolith from the 90s. I don't know if you remember that. And yeah, he was the lead guy, and you know, he had the similar, you know, flowing locks that he does in this. And I just don't think. I think he's better suited as a supporting character. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love him as an actor. He also directed one of my favorite films of all time as well, Frailty. But yeah, I agree with you. Bob Peck absolutely makes the movie. But I also do like Mark Hamill as the villain. I think he makes a good villain in this, and I think, you know, obviously, he suffered from being typecast, and I don't think he'd done a theatrical film.
I think this was his first. I think this was his first. He'd done some voiceovers, didn't he? But I think it was his first screen.
Yeah. So I mean, what was Return of the Jedi like?
And he was
3. So that's
a few years,
6 years. At least until Slipstream got released. So I'm not sure when they shot Slipstream, and obviously if there was a lot of financial problems, that could have led to some delays. But still, I
can see Mark Hamill's just why he chose to do Slipstream based on the script. I'm assuming the script was pretty good. So I can see why. Yeah, I can see why. But and I mean, this. So basically, what this film does, it falls into that umbrella, which a lot of sci-fi films do, that profound philosophical question: can a android become human? It kind of attempts that, doesn't it? Yeah, and there's and some of my recommendations will probably come into that as well. So and they try and they take from those films, or they try to, I think, in part, particularly some of the perhaps costume and even the way Mark Hamill looks reminds me of a villain from a very popular android bounty hunter kind of film, Blade Runner. It's almost as though you take Rutger Hauer's bad guy, but you make him the bounty hunter, and he's not an android, he's human. He kind of, you know what I mean? So
yeah, it's like flipping Blade Runner. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, so it's but it's I almost wonder whether
let's stick with that a sec, man, because of course, who was in Blade Runner? Harrison Ford. So, you know, he took Luke Skywalker and made the Blade Runner character the baddie. Hey, do you know what? I think what you've just said is more interesting than the film itself.
I should do a documentary on it. But I think I don't know whether you could maybe if you take some of the more adult elements from the film, maybe you could make this a film for the teens, perhaps. I don't know. But then because it seems it doesn't have enough for the adults. I think it doesn't have enough action. It doesn't have enough bite. You don't really like Mark Hamill was good, but I didn't get that sense of because it was like a chase film, wasn't it? At the heart
It's
of
like a
it too.
road movie, yeah.
Yeah, like a road movie chase movie. But often the guy doing the chasing needs to be a bit more brutish, have a bit more edge, and then you really get the sense of
I think
danger.
I think that's a good point. And I think there's two problems with it. And I agree. I think if anything, Mark Hamill could have been done with being more evil. And one of my recommendations is based on that. The second one, I think you can kind of compare directly to Star Wars. So in Slipstream, they've got this admittedly quite cool looking, like aeroplane glider thing. And it looks cool. But the problem is, it's just not very exciting to film because, it's a glider gliding, serenely across beautiful landscapes, although I would argue not shot that well. Beautiful landscapes, but that doesn't give you any sense of speed. Whereas, you look at Star Wars and you've got, like dogfights and you've got like fast cutting, lasers flying everywhere, sound effects as well to suggest, speed and all this kind of stuff. And so, the road movie element works when it's kind of like the buddy road movie thing. But in terms of the threat of somebody chasing them, didn't feel it. Really didn't feel it that much. And you'd spend like stuff, and I love the buddy movie stuff. So you spend some time with the buddy stuff, and then you'd go back to Mark Hamill, and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, they're being chased. I forgot about that. Oh, that Mark Hamill's yeah. So I don't know if that was pacing or what, but
I just think I don't know whether Steven Lisberger just lost control a little bit. I don't know.
Again, maybe it could come down to I in post-production, the film could have just been taken out of his hands, and Gary could have been just desperate to release something. I've got to be honest, my journey with this film was, as a kid, I absolutely hated this film when I saw it because, the poster is beautiful. And honestly, I remember the video shot, they had one of those cutout standees, and I remember seeing it before it came out and going, holy shit, that's a beautiful looking poster. It's got fucking Luke Skywalker in it, looking badass, and the Moundy guy from Aliens. Expectations were high. Mum and Dad rented it for me. I sat down and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" I hated this film as a kid. Now watching it again, and I watched it twice. Similar for you, the second watch was also me trying to understand some of the finer points of it. Second watch, I appreciated it more for the buddy movie element
aspect. Which
as a kid, I was really there for, fighting and shooting and fucking like Luke Skywalker. So it's an interesting one. It's also fun as like a filmmaking thing to kind of look back. Obviously it was shot in England, and there was a lot of like the same American cast who obviously lived, or Canadian cast who lived in America, were turning up again. So there was I forget his character's name, the guy Sergeant Apone, or I think it's Sergeant Apone from Aliens. So the Black Sergeant, he's one of like Bill Paxton's buddies around the table, very distinctive voice. So I was just like, ooh, recognize that voice. And it was confirmed there. Obviously Mark Hamill, Bill Paxton again, Bob Peck, who'd later obviously go to work with Steven Spielberg on Jurassic Park. Role for that. So, there was still very much the British James Cameron, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas elements to it. But I just found it really lacking, dude. So, I think I like it more than when I did as a kid. I can say that.
I mean, I think if you like trashy 80s sci-fi, you don't really want a narrative. You just want bullshit to happen in front of you, so you can just switch off to perhaps pick this up. I did like Bob Peck. I did enjoy the journey for Byron trying to seek his own humanity, rubbing shoulders with very immoral humans, and he had this like strong sense of morality himself, but he was an android. I kind of enjoyed that. And liked and the bit when he did like his Fred Astaire dance thing. I kind of got it a little bit more the second time around.
Yeah.
So I kind of enjoyed that. And Bill Paxton, like you said, I like Bill Paxton. And he always makes me kind of smile. And that kind of buddy, element was quite good too. But yeah, I tell you what, the music though, did you pick up on the music, the score? It had these, I was like, fuck, that's fucking Ghostbusters. That's
Okay.
yeah. So Elmer Bernstein did the score for it. I thought this sounds very familiar, and I looked it up. So the score was pretty nice too.
It's always good to recycle.
Yeah. So it's kind of disjointed pleasures. Overall, it doesn't quite work, but there's kind of little bits which I kind of dug, and the front cover looks pretty cool too. So if anything, just looks good on the shelf.
Yes.
So
brilliant.
There we go.
All right, Jim. So you obviously are dying for this to be out on Blu-ray. Which Blu-ray label do you think is best placed to put this bad boy out?
I think 88 Films would pick this up. I think they do quite well there. I think they're definitely one for this kind of sci-fi 80s horror film. Also, Vinegar Syndrome, because they don't seem to have much of a quality control there. And but no, there are some fun sci-fi films on Vinegar Syndrome. So yeah, I've gone for those two.
Cool. Yeah, good picks. I'm not sure I agree with Vinegar Syndrome. I think 88, well within their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I leant more towards Shout Factory, more for that like kind of 80s retro kind of thing. Yeah. Well, I think I could see 88 or Shout Factory putting those bad boys out. Okay, so Jim, you've sat down, you've watched Slipstream. For some reason, you're wanting something more. What are you going to pair nicely with Slipstream?
I think the core of this film, like I mentioned earlier, that kind of can androids become human. I think the film that does it best for me, and I mentioned it, is Blade Runner. Watch the sequel too, actually, because that's pretty good with Ryan Gosling. So Blade Runner 2049. And if you're tired of wind and you want your post-apocalyptic world to be filled with another element, then Waterworld. Go check that out. If that floats your boat.
I honestly was wondering, I'm like, where the fuck is he going with this? Nice.
So yeah, Wind for Water, Waterworld. And there's loads of good sci-fi films from that era, actually. I could go on, but yeah.
Cool. I would say if you wanted kind of like the what does it mean to be human road movie element, which I feel does it better, Starman from John Carpenter. So rather than a robot, alien, very much again, road movie, Karen Allen, Jeff Bridges, just fantastic film. And I feel, the government threat element works a bit better than the Mark Hamill in this one. So I'd say that. Alternatively, if you want to do a Steven Lisberger double bill, TRON. Tron, and this is where I admit, though, I'm not a massive fan of TRON either. I
like TRON. Yeah,
I don't mind it, but it's not. It wasn't like a childhood favorite. I love the visuals. I love the idea of it, but it's one where it doesn't quite deliver for me. But I think maybe pair those two together, you won't be massively impressed by either one. You maintain the stuff. For another post-apocalyptic film, which also has like Star Wars alumni working on it, I'd also recommend Roger Christian's, who was the production designer on the Star Wars, the original Star Wars trilogy. His first film, Lorca and The Outlaws. And what I will say is, it again, the central plot doesn't quite make sense, but what I will say, where it kind of wins over Slipstream, is I feel that Lorca and The Outlaws feels much more of a lived-in universe. You said you were quite impressed with the sets and stuff like that of Slipstream. I was a bit underwhelmed, dude. I kind of felt like, oh, okay, they did some bare set dressing, and that was about it. Lorca, honestly, man, and it's probably because of Roger Christian's background in production design. It's amazing. It's a low budget sci-fi post-apocalyptic film, again with an android, but it makes an amazing world out of must have been a fraction of the Star Wars budget. And then also one more, Mark Hamill playing a legit great bad guy who is a proper threat. Midnight Ride, which is basically Mark Hamill is it's basically like the Hitcher, but with Mark Hamill as the bad guy, and much sleazier and nastier, I would say, than well, maybe not nastier, but definitely sleazier, sweatier than the Hitcher. So try and track down Midnight Ride. Originally, I was actually thinking about that as a future suggestion, but I need to find out whether it actually did come out on Blu-ray or not. So
I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh, have a look. It's also got like Robert Mitchum in it, who was clearly there for like one day.
Ooh, I like the cover.
Yeah. Well worth
it. Yeah. Oh, cool. All right, yeah. Sounds good.
Okay, so guys, have you seen Slipstream? What did you think of Slipstream? Also, guys, are there any other films that you think would pair nicely with Slipstream? Or just randomly, are there any movies out there that you think we should check out and campaign to get a beautiful Blu-ray release? And Jim, what else can these beautiful people do?
Remember, guys, if you do like this video, then please hit the like button. If you've been enjoying the Mad Science content and want to subscribe to our YouTube channel and come follow us on Facebook, any comments, leave us in the comment section down below. Thank you and goodbye.